The American Resistance documents how many Americans woke up after the 2016 election, and it has reminded me of the beauty and resilience of our unique and flawed version of democracy. This book is the product of hundreds of hours of observation in the streets of Washington, D.C., as hundreds of thousands of people marched again and again. It includes meetings with civic leaders and activists, and numerous conversations with representatives of national progressive groups that were working to cultivate and channel this diverse and unwieldy movement. It tells the story of American democracy as it works to better itself, and reminds us all that democracy is a work in progress. It is only as good as the people who take the time and energy to participate in it. Chapter 1. How did we get here? In September of 2018, former President Barack Obama addressed a crowd at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. After months of living outside the political limelight and taking time off to be with his family and to kitesurf with Richard Branson, the former president re-entered public life before the midterm elections. Standing at the podium dressed in black and with a bit more gray around his ears, Obama announced, "I'm here today because this is one of those pivotal moments when every one of us, as citizens of the United States, needs to determine just who it is that we are, just what it is that we stand for. And as a fellow citizen, not as an ex-president, but as a fellow citizen, I am here to deliver a simple message, and that is that you need to vote because our democracy depends on it. The best way to protest is to vote." Although eloquently delivered, the former president's words were not particularly unique. A month later, during a conversation with Victoria Kaplan, the organizing director at Move On, I heard about all the ways her group was working to channel the outrage of the people marching in the streets into political action around the midterm elections. She expanded on Obama's address without even realizing it. You can't just march and think that things are going to change. We march and we organize, and we vote. On the Saturday before the 2018 election, my older sister Lauren and I followed this advice and joined the effort to help get out the vote in Virginia's 10th district. We signed up through the last weekend, a coalition of more than 60 groups that were working on the election. Our assignment was to contact likely Democratic voters in a swing district that was about 30 minutes from each of our houses. I had worked in politics and studied it since my graduation from college, so I am exactly the kind of person you might expect to see volunteering. But Lauren had traveled a different path. Working her way up from practicing law at a firm to serving as general counsel for a media company, Lauren had found little time for marches or political events beyond voting. Despite our varied political experiences, we both felt that we needed to do more than just vote in this midterm election. We arrived for our morning shift at a large house in Virginia, in the suburbs just outside of Washington, D.C. In a cavernous basement recreation room, we joined a crowd of more than 60 people, locals and others who had traveled from nearby Maryland, the District of Columbia, and other districts in Virginia. The people in our Saturday morning shift looked exactly like what my research had found to be the bulk of the American resistance. Mostly middle-aged white women with a few bright pink hats and pins that said #resist on them. We received a quick pep talk from former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, instructions from the candidate's campaign on how to remind inconsistent Democratic voters to vote on Election Day, and we were sent on our way. As I walked out the door into the crisp autumn morning, I shook my head and thought about what I was doing. More than 12 years after writing a book about fundraising canvassing on the left, and 28 years after I had first canvassed in college, I was on my way back out onto turf to knock on doors, this time for an electoral campaign. As my sister and I walked from house to house in this suburban area, crunching on the fall leaves, we quickly discovered that we were not the first canvassers to knock on these doors. These people had talked to other volunteers numerous times before we showed up on that last weekend. Most of the people who answered their door were very friendly, albeit a little exasperated to have more strangers come calling, and showed interest in the election. One woman told us that she was on her way to pick up her daughter at the University of Virginia.